Something that Valenzuela mentioned that wasn't really talked about in the protest or the walkout or the discussion with the school district was that the core curriculum wasn't really put into question. And something she mentioned was one of the teachers commented on this and said that she didn't really feel like they could address the core curriculum when they didn't even have textbooks. So, interesting concept. Some of the conclusions she came to at the end of the chapter was that while the protests and the picketing and the walkout all improved the activism in the community in the Houston Independent School District, especially between the within the Mexican American community, it didn't actually impact the quality of education that the Mexican American students were receiving at Pacific High School, and there's still a lot of improvement that needs to happen. And while they address certain problems, they completely left out other issues. So there's still a lot of reasons that the students aren't receiving the best education that they could.
And then chapter 3 talks about the politics of caring, which was broken down to like authentic and aesthetic caring, which we've talked about before. So Valenzuela says authentic caring or aesthetic caring is pretty much like when the teachers are sticking to the books and the curriculum and not caring to accommodate or understand where the students are coming from. And then authentic caring is like truly looking at where the background is, looking at their culture and why they don't do as well.
And Valenzuela also describes how the student's expectation versus the teacher expectations of caring are different. So the students had a authentic expectation of care where they believed that their teachers needed to inspire them or kind of show them why they should care about school, versus the teachers viewed that it was the student's job to care, and they viewed the students as not caring in kind of an aesthetic way. Like Valenzuela describes how they viewed the way that the students would dress or their hairstyles or their choices as being kind of indicators of how much they cared about their school environment, whereas the students kind of viewed more of like they didn't really have a choice in any of those options, and they're not given reasons to feel like they should care about their school.
And then looking to the self versus to students. So something that she talks about is how teachers put the blame on the students on like why they're not doing well, like they don't care or that they're lazy, instead of like looking at themselves on as to like how they can better serve the students and how they can get them to do better.
Yeah, and a lot of the issues with caring in this chapter go with a lot of what is discussed in chapter 1 and 2. One of the most significant issues, I believe, raised in chapter 2 was that there was a high turnover rate of the teachers. So typically teachers were enrolling in the school district for maybe 1 or 2 years. And those that were in the school district for over 4 to 5 years were typically not high quality teachers. So they had a lot of issues with that. They also had issues with the fact that the teachers in the school district all made more money than kind of any other member of the community, especially the Hispanic community. And so it was difficult for the teachers to really understand and empathize with what students were going through, considering that they were from a different culture, and those teachers made no effort to learn more about that culture, and they couldn't also really empathize with them on like a socioeconomic level because they just didn't understand where the students were coming from.
And then towards the end of the chapter, Valenzuela just gives some examples on like ways that teachers have shown different ways of caring. So whether it was aesthetic or authentic, and like giving examples on how teachers demonstrated that.
So there was one example, I believe, at the end of the book, or the end of the chapter, where she describes how in the Houston Independent School District, they didn't have a lot of like in extracurricular activities, they didn't have sports programs or anything like that. So it's really important for the teachers to kind of take an active role and kind of unite the community. And one example she describes is where it was something about the teacher had realized that like his class was like extremely hungry because they had inadequate like school food programs. So he personally brought in food from that culture just to kind of connect with his students and kind of show them that he cared about their experiences. And I thought that was a really powerful example from the chapter. So next we'll be moving on to chapter 4.
All right, so I have chapter 4, and this basically talks about the urban youth of Monterey. And Valenzuela talks about, or she does like studies on these groups. And this first group is a study of kids that grew up all in the same neighborhood, and they all had economic hardships. She sees in her study that the education in Mexico is a lot more real world connected and a lot more hands on, and also more group based work stuff than others. And then she goes on to tell that these students are more grateful than the U.S. born Mexican youth. And for the next part, the next study she does is on English-speaking immigrants, and she does a study on 4 students that are like fairly good at speaking English, but not the best, and they try for their best to like speak English in school, so when they get out of school they have better opportunities to get jobs. These students have really good experiences in Mexico, and they believe it like shaped who they were as of today. She then explains that in Mexico, if they had like consistent hard work, the students did, then they're more liked by their teachers. And for the last part, it's a pre-literature youth. She does a study on 3 students this time, and there are 3 students that want to drop out of school because it's been difficult for them. They received like little to no help at all in school, and they're really struggling, but they really want to stay in school. And they're really shocked by all the mistreatment that they've had throughout their schooling. And one of the only reasons for them to stay in school was because they wanted to learn how to read and write in English and in both Spanish. Even with all these efforts these kids made, it still ended up bad for them, and they ended up actually dropping out of school. And that's it for me.
For the second part of chapter 4, one of the quotes I like that Valenzuela talks about is Valenzuela sees empeño, or lack thereof, as a process about which a teacher must remain conscious when dealing with youth. So this whole chapter talks about empeño depends on the level of human and social resources youth have or have access to. And when students are given the proper resources, then they gain social capital. Students who cannot speak, for example, students who cannot speak English, so if a student comes from a different country to school in the U.S., and they can't speak English, if they're not given the opportunity to learn the English language, then they'll never gain any social capital by making friends or anything like that. So a form of authentic caring is teachers not assigning differential worth, but rather embracing all students. So when teachers don't embrace all their students' knowledge and if they pick favorites in their classes, then it just kind of destroys the whole yeah, so they don't, whoops. Sorry about that. Oh, could you go back one second? So anyways, immigrant group differences from U.S. born youth. immigrants combine empeño with other resources in a collective fashion. So what that means is that the immigrant-born youth, they have more empeño, they have more diligence towards achieving, to gaining their achievements, because they know the whole struggle behind trying to achieve the American dream. So next slide. So the cross-generational gender and social capital. This is the next portion of chapter 4. So in this chapter, Valenzuela meets with a girl named Graciela. She believes that she is helping her boyfriend, when in reality, she's really just kind of deterring him from gaining his own knowledge, and as well as Norma. Norma helps her boyfriend, who is also a bad influence, and he has no cultural identity. And so Valenzuela continues to talk about the female construct and how these two girls, even though they're not gaining anything from these relationships, they believe that they are, because in this sense, women have like this sort of compromise. They sort of kind of compromise. They do the work for their boyfriend, and in return, the boyfriends kind of give them love and affection, and whatnot. So, and then another portion of this chapter, Valenzuela meets with groups of students that are all female and also all male groups, and she noticed that in these groups, for the majority of the part, like, they just didn't really have any drive in school. The boys, for example, would just go out and drink or go to dances and or go out to dances. And girls, when it was just an all-girl group, they would just gossip or hang out after school. They never really had any drive. So yeah, that's it. Oh wait, next. And then the next slide, we have our questions.
So we have 4 discussion questions for you to think about. You only have to pick 2 to answer. So the first one is, why do you think so much of the blame is put on the students? And then kind of, if all of that would be like, how might we mitigate or resolve this issue, or kind of the many issues that we brought up through the discussion of the 4 chapters of Valenzuela reading. How can we effectively shift the blame, and who is responsible for shifting the blame or the narrative? And then the 4th question you might answer is more of a personal one. So what personal experiences do you have with carrying the classroom, or what personal experiences do you have with any of the issues we brought up in this chapter, such as female gender roles, or just kind of anything we've brought up. So pick 2 of these questions and then answer them after you do this presentation.
Yay! Empty classroom.